Welcome to Ogre's Kitchen. I'm Chef Ogre. Let's check our prep list and see what we have cooking today. Today's recipe, I'm going to show you how to do pulled pork. I'm going to show you just how easy of a recipe this actually is. So let's get into the kitchen and get cooking. Now here we have our pork butt. Now this is actually a shoulder cut from the pork, and this particular one is bone in. This is what we're going to be using today to create some pulled pork. So this is the most common variety of cut that you'll see for pulled pork is the pork butt. And you'll find this in pretty much every grocery store that you go into in their meat department. And they will have different varieties. Some will be bone in, some will be boneless. And it's your choice, whichever one you want to use. The bone in one does take a little bit longer to cook as opposed to the boneless one, but I find that the bone-in is a fantastic flavor that you get from this, and it also prevents some of the shrinkage that's going to go on throughout this slow cooking process. And what better time of year to bust out your slow cooker or just have something roasting in the oven throughout the day, generating those fantastic smells to get you ready for dinner time. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go ahead and we're going to season this up, and we're going to go ahead and put this in our oven around 325 degrees for about 5 hours. So that's a pretty long time, which is okay because that gives you time to visit with company, relax a little bit, create maybe some of the side dishes. You know, you could create some of the salads that we had in a previous video where you have the potato salad, the pasta salad, or even the coleslaw. And today we're actually going to be using our coleslaw recipe from the previous video as a topping for when I make sandwiches out of this pulled pork later. The very first thing we're going to do, however, is create our seasoning for the pulled pork. And we want to put a pretty good amount of heavy seasoning on the outside of this pork butt. The reason for that is we want some of that seasoning to permeate throughout the cooking process, but we also want that seasoning to season all of the inside of this meat once we chop it up at the very end. So in this bowl here, I already have some of my pre-measured ingredients. I have 2 teaspoons of cumin, a 1/4 cup of chili powder, 1/4 cup of paprika, 1/4 cup of brown sugar, 1/4 cup of black pepper, 2 tablespoons of mustard powder, and then 1 cup of salt. And I have my brown sugar on the side here. So all we're going to do is just go ahead and mix all of this up. I'm going to do this in a nice large bowl so that way it's easy to work with and I don't have to worry about spilling. So really just want to make sure all of these seasonings are incorporated together nicely. Then what we're going to do is pull off a little bit of this seasoning. So this might be a little more than what we actually need to season this pork butt. So we're just going to use a little bit at a time as we need it in a little side bowl. So that way we don't have to worry about contaminating our seasoning with the raw pork. And just as soon as this is all incorporated, we'll be ready to go. And you could use whatever type of seasoning you'd like. This is the spice blend that I like to use. I feel like it brings out a lot of fantastic flavors in the pork. It's very complimentary, it kind of gives that barbecue style flavor. Now, if you were to do this recipe out on the grill or in your slow cooker or smoker outside, obviously you'd have to give this a little more attention, but doing it in the oven inside is a fantastic way, kind of a hands-off, easy recipe to follow. Now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to score some of this fat. So this is going to do a couple things. One, it's going to help the seasoning kind of permeate further into the meat as it's cooking, but it's also going to help some of that fat render a little bit more as it's in the oven. So all I'm going to do is just take a knife and lightly score through this top layer of fat. You don't need to score super deep. You don't need to go into the meat, but you're just going through this top fat layer. The underside of this doesn't have this fat layer. This is just on the outside. We'll just give this a little scoring pattern so that way we can then rub in our seasoning. So again, I'm going to take a little side bowl here so that way it doesn't matter if I dip into it. And I'm going to start seasoning my pork. I'll go about half and we'll see how far that gets us. So you want to, again, put a pretty ample amount of seasoning on this pork and just kind of rub it in. It's like you're giving the pork a bit of a massage. I got, again, a nice large bowl here, so I don't have to worry too much about the seasoning escaping, making a mess all over my countertop. It's also catching a lot of that extra seasoning that's falling off, where I can go through and then make sure that the pork is totally covered. And you want to just make sure you're covering all sides of this pork, making sure that it's very well seasoned the entire way around. Now again, if they have the boneless variety, what you'll notice is that this actually folds open. The bone runs straight through the center. And it's kind of the shoulder bone of the pork. And when that's taken out, it opens up from where they take the bone out. So you really, during that case, can open that up and make sure you get seasoning all through the inside as well. The other reason why I really kind of like the bone-in pork butts is because it's really easy to tell whenever they're done, because that bone will just slide straight out without any resistance. And if that's the case, you know your pork is ready to go. So that this is really nicely well seasoned on all sides, I can transfer this to my cooking vessel. And my cooking vessel here is this enameled cast iron. You could use whatever roasting pan you have, but we're going to make sure that this is deep enough to fit our pork butt. This is about a 9-pound pork butt, and that includes the weight of the bone as well. But you also want to make sure that you can actually cover this throughout the cooking process. Otherwise, it's going to get very charred, it's going to dry out. But we want to trap in the moisture, we want to trap in the heat, and that way it's going to slowly cook over the course of that 5 hours that we have it in the oven. And now this is ready to go into the oven. I just grab a few sheets of foil. We'll cover this up, make sure it's nicely covered. And off to the oven this goes. Now for any of your leftover seasoning, you could just simply store this into a container and use it as needed. It's a fantastic spice blend, and you could use it anytime you make more pulled pork or any barbecue dish, in my opinion. Use this on chicken, you could use it on beef, whatever your preference is. It's fantastic seasoning blend. Now, while my pork is cooking in the oven, I'm going to go ahead and generate what I feel is a fantastic additional seasoning to the pork. And also, this can double as the actual sauce for the pork. Now, let me know in the comments down below, what is your favorite type of sauce to put on pulled pork? Do you like traditional barbecue? Do you like maybe a mustard base? Or in this case, we're going to go with what they consider a clear barbecue sauce, which is basically just a vinegar base with sugar and a few extra seasonings in it. So what we're going to do in this pot here, we're going to go ahead and turn this on high, and we're going to add 1.5 cups of brown sugar, and to that we're going to add 3 cups of apple cider vinegar. And we'll take a whisk and we'll go ahead and whisk this up. Bring this up to temperature. We'll bring it up to a full boil. And we're also going to add 2 tablespoons of red pepper chili flake. I grab our whisk. We'll go ahead and just make sure that that's all incorporated into the mix there. So now we'll let this come up to a full boil, and then we'll reduce it down to a simmer to reduce roughly by half. And that'll give us a fantastic flavor of the red chili pepper flakes, the vinegar, which will add a nice acidity and punch to the pulled pork. And I feel like it's a great base seasoning that you add to the pulled pork as you're chopping it up. And you can, like I said, just use this as the sauce entirely, or you can use this in conjunction with your favorite type of barbecue to add to your pulled pork. Now that our mixture of apple cider vinegar, brown sugar, and chili pepper flakes has come up to a boil, I'll turn this down to a very low heat and allow it just to simmer for a little while so it reduces down a bit. This is really going to create a kind of sweet and sour type flavor for our pulled pork and adds just another layer of flavor that's absolutely delicious. All right, now we've pulled our pork out of the oven. I actually checked this a little while ago when it did hit the 5-hour mark, and it wasn't quite where I wanted it yet, so I put it back in for an extra hour, and now we've checked it again. It's exactly where I'd like it, and let me show you here. It is fantastic. Those smells that we're getting from the spice blend that's on here, it's just absolutely mouth-watering. And then we have our vinegar mixture that we made up as well that we'll be adding into this pork as we're pulling it. So we'll set this aside. We'll have this at the ready. We also do have some extra salt and pepper seasoning just in case we need to adjust the seasoning there as well. But let me just show you what I mean about when this bone is ready to come on out. So you can see how that just easily pulls away like that. And the bone just comes straight out. Super clean, and that's how you know that your pork is ready to go. Now you could save this bone if you want. It's been cooked. If you were to try to use that, you're not going to really get much out of it, much flavor-wise, if you were to use this in a stock or anything, unless you had a large amount of other bones to use. So we'll go ahead and get rid of this. And then you have some options here. So some people like to save this whole fat cap that's on top and just chop it into the meat. So that's your preference if you like that. It is coated in all that seasoning, and fat is flavor. So that's up to you if you want to save that or if you want to skim some of that off. All you have to do is really just kind of pull your hand across, and all of that will kind of pull away. And you could choose whether to discard that or keep it and chop it straight into your mixture here. So I have a nice large bowl that I'm going to start to work in, and I'm just going to take large chunks of this with my tongs. Now this is extremely hot, so you could use your hands, but I would recommend wearing some heavy duty gloves or layers of gloves if you're going to do something like that. Me, I like to use tongs. It's just convenient. You kind of just pull stuff away like this. Just brace with one side, and you can see how nice and tender this is. It's pulling apart real easily. They make all sorts of extra devices that you can use. They have like these claws that you can use. I've never used them myself. I've always been a big fan of just getting a pair of tongs. You could even use a meat fork. Meat fork works really well for shredding up this pork. Sometimes I've even used spatulas, or you could throw it on a cutting board and chop it up with knives like that. That's often the way you'll see it in a lot of these barbecue places. They'll lay everything out on a giant butcher block and have some meat cleavers, and they'll just chop through this entire thing. Now just be on the lookout. There might be a few other bones here and there, but for the most part, you really just have that one main bone that runs through. And then we'll just be careful on the bottom here, using metal against our enameled cast iron. Just be really careful. You don't want to damage the enamel layer on it. So I'm not scraping across the bottom, just gently pulling stuff away from the bottom that may have gotten stuck. Now this fat that's on the bottom is still usable as well. You can make a couple different choices when you're doing this, where if you'd like to chop that into the actual pork itself, or you could save this and use it for different cooking applications later on. If you let it cool, it will solidify, and then you could just use little bits at a time. It's highly flavorful at this point with all those seasonings that have been in this pot cooking away with the rest of the pork. And so now that we have that cleared up, we can go ahead and we'll clear this out of the way. And now as we're working, I'm going to keep that vinegar and brown sugar mixture with the red pepper flake nearby. What I'm going to do is just start to incorporate that. And you could see with this here, this actually has a little bit of viscosity to it. It's a little bit thick. It's almost like a light, simple syrup, basically, at this point. So I'm just going to start to add little bits of this at a time, few ladlefuls at a time, until I get this right where I'd like it flavor-wise. This is going to help add so much more extra flavor. Like I said, I really enjoy the pulled pork just like this with the vinegar mixture, but you're more than welcome to add whatever barbecue sauce you really like. As I'm going through this, I'm just checking to see if I feel any bones as well. I just don't want to have any of that in there. And that's really a big benefit is if you use your hands. Because again, you just got to be careful. It's obviously extremely hot. And you just see how nice and tender this is. And we're just breaking up any large chunks. Now, as I said, I'm going to be pairing this with one of my salads that I made in a previous video. And that's actually the coleslaw. And that dressing that we have with the coleslaw that has the garlic and onion grated into the dressing is a really excellent complementary flavor to this pulled pork. And it just adds yet another element of flavor that's absolutely delicious. Now, if you see here, you got a little piece of cartilage. You can go ahead and get rid of this. This will be a little bit too chewy for eating. So you go ahead and remove pieces like that from there. And then we're just going to continue to break up any large chunks until you get it to the consistency that you want. And then we're going to continue also to ladle in little bits at a time this mixture here, because you can see this pork will just keep on absorbing all this excellent flavor. And this helps just add a little more tanginess, a little sweet, little sour flavor to it. It's just really excellent flavor. A little bit of spiciness, not over the top spiciness either. Looks like a lot of chili pepper flakes, but really mixed with the sugar, it kind of counteracts any of the over the top spiciness that you might get. And now we're getting to a point here where I'm going to go ahead and give this a taste and see if we need to add any more seasonings to our pulled pork. I'll go ahead and give this a little bit of a try, see if it needs any more seasoning. And that is an excellent pulled pork. I am going to add a little salt to help it bring out a little bit more of these flavors. And then I'm going to continue to add just a little bit more of this vinegar mixture, because I just love this flavor. And just the aromas that are coming off of this, just that spice blend, you are getting hits of that cumin in there and the chili powder, that paprika. It's so aromatic. And then you're mixing that with the aromatic of the vinegar. It's just mouth-watering, I'm telling you. And we'll go ahead and add a little more of this vinegar. And just keep on mixing until it reaches flavor profile that you like. And that's what cooking's all about. It's adjusting seasonings, getting things to exactly where you want them. Let's go ahead and give this one last taste. We're getting some amazing flavor there now, and I think we're good right where we're at. Like I said, we can pair this up with a barbecue sauce that we like, and that'll just complete the entire dish. So we'll get ready and we'll plate this up and make a sandwich out of this. All right, so now we're set and we're ready to go ahead and put together our pulled pork sandwich. So I'm just going to start here with Martin's potato roll. These are absolutely delicious. Now you could choose to toast this if you want, but I like them really nice and soft just as is. And we're going to go ahead and add a layer of pork onto this. And I'm going to top it with some of my favorite pulled pork toppings, which are pickles and coleslaw. Or you can serve this coleslaw as a side as well, but it goes so well as a topping for pulled pork. Flavors are complementary, helps add some extra crunch and texture, as does the pickles. So we'll go ahead and we'll give them 2 pickles on this, why not? And then you can see our coleslaw looks absolutely delicious. We'll give a nice heaping spoonful on top there, and there we have it. There's our pulled pork sandwich, piled high and ready to eat. So how's that for a pulled pork sandwich? Absolutely delicious. And we're going to go ahead and bite on into this, see how it is. All those flavors coming through. That pickle, the garlickiness of the coleslaw dressing, the crunch from the cabbage, the pork itself was sweet, the tanginess, that punch from the vinegar. It is absolutely delicious. This is one of my favorite meals. It's easy to prepare, takes a little bit of time, but it's kind of set it and forget it. Let it go. And then you'll have a feast for everyone at the end of the day. And it's so worth it. So I hope you give this recipe a try. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. And I really, really do hope that you give this one a try, because it is so good you don't want to miss out on. Well, I hope today's recipe was helpful for you, and I hope it showed you just how easy you can create pulled pork, and it doesn't have to be something that's complicated or difficult to do. And while this is kind of like an all-day cooking method, kind of like if you're using your slow cooker, it's a great way to feed a crowd and fill your household with fantastic smells throughout the day that'll get you ready for dinner time. And again, I really hope you enjoyed this recipe, and I hope you give it a try at home. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Let me know if you tried anything different. And even tell me, what's your favorite barbecue sauce? You know, there's a lot of varieties out there, from the mustard base to tomato base to what we used today, which was kind of a clear vinegar based barbecue. So go ahead and leave your comments down below, and thank you for watching. That's it from Ogre's Kitchen. Time to sweep, mop, and go home. If you enjoyed today's video, please like and feel free to share. Subscribe for more content and hit that notification bell for when new videos are uploaded. For all those who are subscribed, thank you for your support. Hope to see you next time, and until then, keep those cauldrons bubbling and feast well.